When I was reading this week's Torah portion, I was reminded of an incident where one of my congregants once came to me and told me, Rabbi, I read the stories of the Torah. You keep talking about them. But I feel that they're not relevant to me, he says. You speak about Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Adam and Eve, Moses, Aaron. These were people that were so larger than life. Their lives were so exemplary that I almost feel that it's not relevant to me. I'm just a regular person, full of my own doubts. I don't even know if I believe in God all the times. I have my doubts, he tells me. And here you come and tell me stories about the greatest heroes of the Jewish people who were more on heaven than they were on earth. How do I even begin to emulate such people? So I told him, you know who you should look to? I said, you should look to Noach. Noach is the hero of this week's Torah portion. The story of the flood, the famous story. Noach is told by God to build an ark, to bring in his family of every species of animal, and followed the flood followed, destroyed all peoples. And Noach comes out of the flood comes out of the ark after the flood and rebuilds it all from new. He saved the world and started it all over. You'd be surprised if I told you that the rabbis tell us that Noach himself was a man full of doubts. He wasn't such a, he didn't, as Rashi puts it, he didn't even believe so strongly that the flood is going to happen. This is after God told him he's going to make a flood. But Noach had his doubts, and he says that the waters pushed him in. He didn't even go into the ark till after the gushing waters were became obvious that he has to go into the ark. So he had his doubts. And the rabbis go further and say that if you compare Noach, if he would live in a different generation of Avram, for example, he would be considered as a regular person. So this, in summation, you get to, from the opinion of the rabbis of Noach is not one like they have of Abraham and Yitzchak, Isaac and Jacob and so on and so forth. I told this Jew, I said, you should look to Noach for your inspiration, because he's a regular person. He is a person who had questions, and he had his doubts, and he was just, didn't always have this uplifting feeling every morning that he's on some spiritual high, and so on. He was just a regular person. And yet he got the job done. He built an ark. It took him 120 years to build that ark. He didn't get lazy. He made sure it happened with all his questions, with all his doubts. He got the job done. He didn't allow his doubts to paralyze him. He allowed himself to do the right thing. And I think that is a great lesson for every single one of us. We too have questions. We too have our moments, right? There's nothing so terrible if not every one of your questions will be answered. No one ever died from a question. I don't know if you know this, but the famous 4 questions that we ask at the Seder, every child, the Manishtana, right? Everyone knows that. You may not know this, but 2 of those 4 questions don't get answered. We go through the whole Seder and we don't answer all the 2 of the questions. We answer the other 2 we don't. And it's obvious because it's an important lesson. Not every question needs an answer. And not every question in life are you going to get an answer. You may die with doubts. You may go to sleep with doubts. But that's not the most important thing. Well, I'm less concerned about your doubts than what you do. If you can get the job done, you can raise a family, get married, build a Jewish home, do what you have to do, and you still have questions when you put your head on the pillow to go to sleep at night, I guarantee you nothing terrible will happen from that. If you're lucky enough, you go to the rabbi, he'll answer your question, very good. Chances are you'll probably have another question. From questions, no one dies. From being lazy and not getting the job done, that has terrible consequences. Noach is every person's hero. He was a regular person with doubts. He wasn't larger than life personality. He wasn't Abraham, he wasn't Isaac, he wasn't Jacob, certainly wasn't Moses. He was me and you. And yet, he saved the entire world. He made sure that after the flood, the world can continue. That's my hero. Shabbat Shalom.